What is up, guys? Devin McDonald with Bratton Sports Performance. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about training in season and why it is everyone should be doing it. So, with competition seasons ramping up, your practices are starting up, you're starting to play in games and competitions, it may get easy to put that training off to the wayside. But I'm going to be telling you guys today why it is that you should keep up your training and continue working with a professional. So I'm going to start this off by introducing you guys to the SAID principle. So essentially what this is, specific adaptations to imposed demands. And what that means is that the human body can only adapt to something that is specifically done to it. And a good example of that is that you only get faster by running at full speed. So you're not going to get faster by jogging because your body doesn't need to adapt to that stimulus. And so when we take this SAID principle, we need to apply that to our training demand of an in-season athlete. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come over and we're going to look at the stimulus, recovery, and adaptation curve, which is what's happening when you're applying that specific stimulus, okay? So what's happening here is we have three different lines. The first one is our red line, which is our optimal SRA. The second one is a green, which is what's happening if there's not enough stimulus. And the third one is overdoing it. So you'll see with this optimal, we're applying some stimulus and then we're recovering, and this new baseline here is our adaptation. So this is us in a sprint workout. We recover by sleeping and eating, and then once we recover from that, our adaptation is now becoming faster. If we don't do any sprint training at all, we're going to continue to just stay at that same baseline. And if we're doing too much work or we're not recovering well enough, we're actually going to lose performance. And so what that has to do with training in season for athletes, we're going to look over at the types of stimulus that are actually applied in your sport and in your training. So when you think about your sport and sort of the actions that you have during your sport, I like to use, for example, let's say you're a volleyball player and you're in a competition and you're moving yourself around to get yourself into a position to pass, set, and hit. You're not actually moving at full speed, right? You're more or less moving at a middle intensity, just trying to be as accurate and skilled as possible. And so with our stimulus that's applied, we have three different kinds. We have low, medium, and high. And that example of the volleyball player, or let's say you're on the basketball court and you're running a play, right? You're not running at full speed, you're running to put yourself into a position as accurately as possible to be the most successful that you can be. And so we look at that, and most of what happens in a sport falls under that medium intensity, where when we're training, we want to fill those other two buckets to best optimally round out your training. And so we want to fall in that low and high intensity, which is your max effort sprinting, your max effort plyometrics, so jumping, med ball work, lifting heavy, lifting explosively, and then our low intensity stuff is going to be our shoulder care for our overhead athletes, stretching, mobility, all that structural training that's going to help round you out as an athlete, keep you healthy, but it's not super high intensity. And so if we look at sort of the training as a whole and what it looks like throughout the entire year, we have another graph talking about basically the entire macro cycle or the entire year of what it looks like for athletes. So if we look here, we've got a key. The red line is the total accumulation of stimulus or the total amount of work that you're doing. Green is your training demand, so working out, and then blue is your sport. So we have our off-season, pre-season, in-season, and post-season. As we approach our season, the demand from our sport is increased. You're practicing more, you're going to more you're going to more tryouts, competitions, tournaments, whatever it may be. You're way up here now. In the off season, we're able to put in a lot of work in the training facility. You're able to sprint a lot, lift a lot, all that stuff, because we don't have a lot of demand for the sport. So the accumulation of these two still meets in the middle. And these two dotted lines right here is your maximal recoverable stimulus and your minimal effective dose. And basically what that means is this is the most you can do and still recover from that workout, and this is the least you can do to improve. So we want to stay in between these two zones. And so the accumulation of these two lines is right in the middle, and that's perfect. And as our in-season work, or as we start to add on more of our sport demand, we start to dip down on our training demand. So, we want to continue to fall in the middle of these two lines, but what tends to happen is people think that they either need to stop training or continue to train the way they had been training all off season. And so as you can see, the total stimulus, if we continue to train the way we were all off season, falls way over the maximal recoverable stimulus, which can lead to things like fatigue, loss in performance, or even injury. But if we do not train at all and we completely stop training as we get into season, this line falls below the minimal effective dose, and that comes back to this not improving at all. And because we're not training those principles, we're not training our athleticism, our explosiveness, and our strength and our speed, we tend to lose those things, and you're actually losing performance over the course of the season. And if we go back to our types of stimulus applied, we see our maximal recoverable stimulus and our minimal effective dose, and that we're not getting much of those low and high intensities with our sport, which is why we need to fall within those realms during our training. And one of the reasons that this is so important, as well as just maintaining your performance and keeping your ability, your athletic ability high, is that this actually is going to help prevent a lot of injuries that would come if you stopped training altogether. So what tends to happen is our bodies are used to moving at these high speeds, and we're used to stopping under these high amounts of load at these high velocities. Well, if we're losing that strength and we're losing that power, then our body's not going to be used to or be able to handle those high speeds anymore. So now when you go to make a cut that in the preseason you were totally fine doing because you trained at those high speeds all the time, it's not an issue. But now as we get further into the season, if we are doing too little and we lose that athleticism, those cuts could actually result in an injury because your body's not ready for that stress. Or on the flip side, let's say you just keep doing everything you were doing in the off season, and now we're way overstressed. Well, now we're still losing some of those adaptations because we're doing too much. Our body can't recover. And so we can still get put into that same situation, which is why it is so important to find a professional that knows exactly what needs to be prescribed based on your practice schedule, based on your game schedule. Travel adds stress too. So when we look at this grand scheme of things, you just need to think, no matter what, everything you do is a stimulus applied. But when it pertains to the sport, all of that stimulus is going to fall into that middle category. So you just need to work with a professional on exactly what it is you need to be doing in that season to maintain your power, athleticism, your performance, and help reduce some of those injuries that otherwise would be prevalent if you weren't training in season. So if you guys have any more questions on the topic of training in season, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we'll see you at the next Coach's Corner.